You may not believe it, but this guy and this guy can technically be related to this guy when you go down the trade tree. It's not fun for Vancouver Canucks fans, but for the Pittsburgh Penguins faithful stopping by, I wanted to go out there and make this video talking about how you guys seem to have won the trade big time. Now, which trade are we talking about? Egor Chinakhov, Marcus Pettersson, Drew O'Connor. Obviously, we're talking about the Canucks and the Penguins, but I wanted to refer to the Marcus Pettersson trade because this is a move that I think Canucks fans have really started to sour on over the past few months. Not because Marcus Pettersson or Drew O'Connor are bad players, but because the necessity of whether or not this trade was even a good one to make for this team is now put into question. Take a look at the initial trade that went down all the way back on January 31st, 2025. So it's been over a year. The Vancouver Canucks sent Danton Heinen, Vinny Desharnais, Melvin Fernstrom, and a first-round pick over to Pittsburgh in exchange for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. Now, we can get into the entire conversation as to how, this trade really wasn't productive because the Canucks knew that Quinn Hughes was going to leave anyway, and they may have been forced down the inevitable path of rebuilding, so why would they go out there and make a trade where they're sending away a first-round pick and a prospect in order to get two win-now pieces? They ended up re-signing Marcus Pettersson as well. He's got a $5.5 million AAV contract extension till 2031. For the most part, I'd say that contract is fine, but Marcus Pettersson has struggled this season, as have most Vancouver Canucks players. Despite Drew O'Connor going out there and literally leading the team in goals with 15 goals in 64 games played so far. But I wanted to turn your attention to Egor Chinakhov of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, he was not included in this Canucks and Penguins deal, but if you go down and look at the actual trade tree, this is where we dive into the Chinakhov evaluation. Big shout out over to Loki DeVille, who posted this on the R Pittsburgh Penguins subreddit earlier this morning. How the Penguins got Egor Chinakhov, and possibly one of the greatest trades ever for Pittsburgh. This trade tree goes out there and shows that the Vancouver Canucks received Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson, and the Pittsburgh Penguins received, first, that New York first-round pick, which was traded to Philadelphia for a Colorado first and Edmonton's first. The Penguins selected Bill Zonon with Colorado's first. The Penguins then traded Edmonton's first and Washington's second-round pick from the Anthony Beauvillier trade to LA for their first-round pick. So the Penguins turned the New York first into two firsts, essentially, in order to select Bill Zonon and Will Hjorkhoff. Danton Heinen was acquired by Pittsburgh in this trade. He was traded over to Columbus, alongside of a St. Louis second-round pick and a Washington third-round pick. The Penguins, at the end of the day, ended up with Egor Chinakhov after all of this. Vinny Desharnais was traded over to San Jose for a 2028 fifth-round pick, and then you have Melvin Fernstrom, who is the prospect included at the end of it. Now, this is honestly kind of difficult to comprehend. Even the Danton Heinen part, I would say, doesn't look the smoothest when you break it down. But when you go over to Egor Chinakhov and his situation, take a look at Puckpedia.com and look at the trade history. This is where we can really get into how everything went down. This is essentially what we are looking for here, Egor Chinakhov and Danton Heinen. The Penguins acquired Chinakhov from the Blue Jackets for Danton Heinen, a 2026 second and a 2027 third. So, there you go. Alongside of Danton Heinen, the Penguins needed to add a whole bunch of picks to make it go through. But at the end of the day, they ended up getting Egor Chinakhov. So, technically, you could trace all of this back to the Drew O'Connor-Marcus Pettersson trade. And even though it does sound a little bit confusing, the end result is that the Pittsburgh Penguins have a guy who has legitimately been one of the best goal scorers on the team ever since his acquisition. Chinakhov has 11 goals in 26 games played with the Pittsburgh Penguins, a pretty big step up from the 3 goals he had in 29 games with the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. His career high of goals on a season is 16, so he is a few away from matching that. But if you take a look at just the Pittsburgh Penguins' production, 19 points, 26 games, let's do 11 goals, divvy 26, multiplied out by 82. Chinakhov is on pace for a 34-goal year if you do the math over this sample of Penguins play. And then if you take a look at the overall points, this would roughly equate to a 60-point season. Not bad for a guy who just turned 25 and who is already starting to find his stride after being more of a second, third option in Columbus. So at the end of the day, even though Pittsburgh needed to add on a whole bunch of extra stuff to make this trade work in their favor, Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson seem to have been afterthoughts for this fan base and this team. The fact that they ended up getting 2 first-round caliber prospects and Egor Chinakhov alongside of a 5th-round pick for Desharnais and prospect Melvin Ferenstrom seems like the Penguins made out like bandits, even though they had to trade away some extra stuff. Essentially, it's Drew O'Connor, Marcus Pettersson, a St. Louis 2nd, a Washington 3rd, and then the other Washington 2nd-round pick over here in exchange for Bill Zonin, Will Hjorkhoff, Egor Chinakhov, a 5th-round pick, and Melvin Ferenstrom. That's a pretty good piece of business if you break it down like that. Now, I can understand y'all might be taking a look at me and saying, Lego, this is too difficult to understand, and even some of the comments are going out there and taking a look at this as well. Congrats, you took something quite complicated and hard to follow and made it even more complicated and even more difficult to comprehend. Really, you just gotta look at it, I would say. It's not that bad, but at the end of the day, the Penguins won this trade big time. Drew O'Connor, while it is true that he is a valuable Vancouver Canucks scorer, I would say that it's not necessarily like he moves the needle enough to push the Vancouver Canucks in a proper direction. Marcus Pettersson, as much as people have liked to talk about the contract he has gotten and say that it's actually fine, he has struggled a lot this season, and I think a lot of that does have to do with the fact that the team is just not structurally sound. You talk about defensive structure, you talk about the systems. Nobody's really doing well under Vancouver systems this season, so I can understand how you could give Marcus Pettersson a little bit of leeway, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you already knew Quinn Hughes was not going to come back. Why would you make that trade? Why would you not just go out there and use these assets to get the players that Pittsburgh ended up getting? Why not use that 1st-round pick to get a Bill Zonin or whatever have you? There was an opportunity for Vancouver to really take advantage of their team post-JT Miller trade. But no, they wanted to execute another win-now type of move, which is exactly what they did. And now, Pittsburgh is coming out of it at the end, looking like they're bolstering their future with the Egor Chinakhov acquisition, with the 2 draft picks, with Melvin Ferenstrom. At the end of the day, I think it's very clear to see just 1 year later, the Pittsburgh Penguins have won this trade big time with the Vancouver Canucks. And I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Will there become a point where a guy like Drew O'Connor is ever a top 6 forward, and he proves to everybody in Pittsburgh and in Vancouver that the trade to acquire him was actually a positive move? Can Marcus Pettersson stabilize as a top 4 defenseman long-term till at least 2031 when his contract goes on until? Is it possible for Vancouver to save themselves from the trade that was, the Marcus Pettersson-Drew O'Connor deal, or are we doomed to seeing this as a really big Pittsburgh win for the rest of time? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.